So the one arm pull up, an absolute beast of a calisthenics exercise and a difficult one to train for. In today's video I wanted to address how to train for the strength element of this move, so I'll go over the 3 exercises I use to build raw one arm pull up strength. Now the goal of these exercises is to build as much strength as possible. It's not really important here to have a good movement pattern throughout the one arm pull up. That's not really the point of this video and these exercises, which is why I'm calling them raw strength builders. Alright, so the first exercise you can use to build a raw one arm pull up strength would be weighted pull ups. This is probably the most popular method of working towards the one arm pull up. I mean, both has a foundational step to get to a necessary base level before you can start doing unilateral work, but also throughout the training. This differs a bit from person to person training for the one arm though. Personally, once I got to 75% of body weight for a weighted pull-up, I decided to stop weighted pull-up training and focus primarily on just doing unilateral work, and that worked well for me. But some people do weighted pull-up training alongside their unilateral work throughout the entire journey, and that works for them. So here you sort of have to feel it out. If you're really a fan of weighted pull-ups, it might be worth to have them in your program throughout. Otherwise, it might be nice to just get you to a base level of strength and then continue on with unilateral variations only. And here it seems a bit difficult to say what is the actual percentage of body weight you need to get to before you can start doing unilateral work, or before you at least incorporate that into your program alongside the weighted pull-ups. Some people say 50%, some people say as much as 80%. It varies a lot. I mean, some people want to get to 100% weighted pull-up and think that that will give them the one arm pull-up, but that's not really the case. I mean, you have examples of people being able to do 100% and even more than that of their body weight on a weighted pull-up, but they're not able to do a one arm pull-up. And then you have examples of people that have never trained much weighted pull-ups, but they can still do one arm pull-up. So it's a difficult move to address in that sense. But for me, I tend to say that people have to feel it out for themselves. If you're very into getting to those unilateral variations, and if you really want to get started on that, do some of those progressions and ease into it alongside your weighted pull-up journey once you start hitting some good numbers. But what I'd recommend as a general thing would be to get to, I'd say 60 to 70% of body weight on a weighted pull-up. That way you have a pretty good baseline for starting to build more unilaterally specific strength. Now the next exercise is going to be isometric holds. These are absolutely amazing for building specific strength, specific unilateral strength at particular angles. I mean, some popular angles would be to have a complete lockout, 90 degrees as well as a 120 degree angle. But the thing about isometric holds is that you can use them to strengthen any type of angle. So if you struggle, I did that for a little while with something in between. If you notice okay, this movement right here before I'm at a lockout where I can hold it pretty easily, and right after I've sort of moved away from 90 degrees, which I can also hold quite well, that type of position here seems really weak for me. Okay, practice that. If you need assistance, use an assistance band, use a sling, use a pulley, all of these different things, and then you can build up time. The thing that's so nice about isometric training is that you don't only strengthen the angle at which you're holding the movement, but also 15 degrees in both directions from that point as well. So you get a 30 degree sort of range of motion that is strengthened by you just holding one single position. So for this, I'd feel out what are my weak areas, what do I need to work with, and spend a couple of weeks, couple of months working on those specifically before you maybe have a bit more of a general program and a general approach. And generally, I'd want to aim at 6 to 7 seconds for hold time. Alright, now the next exercise is going to be negatives. This is somewhat controversial as they're quite risky for beginners when it comes to one arm pull-up training, and it puts a lot of strain on your shoulders if you're not able to catch yourself properly, or if you don't have enough strength to actually do the negative and you just sort of jolt down onto your shoulder. That's not very good at all. So I tend to advise beginners and intermediates to not really go for negatives unless they really notice that they're able to hold it. I advise at least 5 seconds for descent time, really be able to control it, because there's no point in just rushing to the exercise and getting an injury. The biggest thing throughout training generally, sure you want to get to a movement such as the one arm pull up, and it's awesome to level up, none of us want to stagnate, but the biggest problem within training would be to get an injury. Say you're out of training for several weeks or several months and then have to build back during another couple of weeks and months, right? It takes a lot of time out of your training and hinders your progress a lot. So even though it might seem boring and it might seem sort of disheartening at times, try to just keep a steady pace and keep leveling up gradually rather than making huge leaps leading to injuries and then having these absolute waveforms in your training, doing a lot of progress in a short amount of time because you're putting a lot of stress on your body, but then doing so much stress that you end up crashing and burning, getting an injury and being out of training and losing pretty much all of those gains. So yeah, here again, like a regression you could do for this if you are, I guess, more new to negatives, and if you don't have the strength to do a fully, let's say 5-second descent time just at body weight, you could use bands or you could use a pulley system to sort of ease into it. But at that point, I think I would just generally prefer doing isometrics, maybe working a bit more on your weighted pull-ups before you eventually get into these negatives. And once you start building proper good unilateral strength, some progressions of negatives that you could do would be multiple repetitions of negatives, just one after the other. Have a longer descent time, so do like, instead of 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, really have it slow and controlled, and make sure that if you find particular weak spots along your negative, that you either target those in terms of isometrics or you just work that particular range really slowly, because you want to have full body control. That's the goal, right? Being able to be in complete control of your body and all of the different intricate movements that make up the one arm. I mean, now we're working the negative, right? So it's not the actual one arm, but still, you want to have as much control as you can possibly exhibit. And another progression to negatives would obviously be to add weight. But again, careful with this. Form is paramount. Don't rush into an injury. It's not worth it. Alright, so now for the reps, the sets, the hold times, the rest times, number of sessions per week, all of that jazz. Starting off with reps and hold times. For the weighted pull-ups, I've been a fan of lately doing 3 to 5 reps. However, I realise that this might be a bit too intense for some people, so doing 4 to 6 or even 5 to 7 reps is sort of a good range to stay within. Then for isometrics, I'd go for 6-7 seconds is where it's most effective. So at least 5 seconds, 5 to 8 seconds, that type of range is pretty good. Once you start hitting 8 seconds, you know you're getting solid in that weight category and in that particular angle. Then for negatives, as I said, 5-second descent time, if not longer. Really important to just make sure you are safe in that movement and you're protecting your joints, your shoulders. You don't want to be too harsh on this, and you don't want to risk loading a lot of weight on, just jumping up to the bar for a 2-second descent when it's sort of it ends up being a 1-second descent and just snapping down. Then for rest times, generally for strength training, I'm a fan of having 3 to 5 minutes of rest. Before this is quite darn intense, so 4 minutes I'd say at a minimum. Closer to 5 minutes of rest would be ideal, I think. And yeah, for some people you might also see great benefits with having even longer than 5 minutes of rest. So play a bit around with this and see what works for you. Now for the number of sets per session, I think this is a quite difficult one to determine. I mean, I'd say that when I trained weighted pull-ups as my main thing before doing any unilateral stuff, I would go for 3 to 5 sets and sort of build up gradually. I'll talk more about that later. But I'll do 3 to 5 sets. But then at the end I might do some supplementary work, doing perhaps some rows, some just additional stuff. So 3 to 5 sets, quite intense weighted pull-ups, and then some supplementary work at the end. However, for this, if you're doing several exercises, you're not just doing weighted pull-ups. I mean, firstly, I don't think I would recommend doing all of them in one session, like weighted pull-ups, isometric holds and negatives, because it's very, very strenuous. Although, if you did, or if you just picked out 2 of them, I would try to cap the number of working sets at, well, 8 at least, but maybe even like 6 to 8, I wouldn't go any higher than that. Already if you get 5-6 sets, 5 sets is already, I'd say, pretty darn good volume if you have this type of intense training. And then how many sessions per week do you want to do? This varies a lot depending on where you are in your one-arm pull-up journey, how much you're training generally in your program, how used you are to strength training. But I'd say that optimally you get in 2 high-quality pulling sessions per week. However, it depends a bit how you want to set this up. A good thing to know about these exercises in this video is that they're very CNS fatiguing. And with that I mean that they deplete the central nervous system to a high degree. They require a lot of energy and they're very taxing, they're very fatiguing on the body, not just like your back when you're pulling and your biceps, but they lead to a lot of just fatigue. So you'll notice that if you have too many of these sessions day in and day out, it will be difficult to perform the next day around, because it fatigues not only your muscles, and not only your muscles in a particular area, but also your central nervous system. Your central nervous system is for the next session, gonna cap your strength output because it was sort of shocked by how much load it was put through the last time around. So keeping this in mind, if your program allows for it, having 2 sessions like this per week would be great if you're focusing on just building strength and building strength and building strength. But if you also want to do a lot of different exercises, for example, working on the one arm pull-up movement pattern, if you want to do a lot of different activities that require a lot of sort of full body exertion, whether that be martial arts like wrestling, jiu-jitsu, judo, if you do a lot of running, a lot of biking, a lot of hours on the bike, a lot of hours on the track, and you really deplete your body in that sense and also impact your CNS, it might be hard to keep up with 2 sessions per week. What I've been doing lately myself in terms of one arm pull-up training is that I've had 1 day per week which is really CNS intensive, so doing exercises like these, like isometric holds, negatives, and one arm pull-up attempts, like max pull-up attempts. So if I can do more than 1 rep on a particular day, I'll go for like reaching 2 or however many reps I can get. Or if I'm feeling particularly weak, I'll still just try to go for as good of a rep as possible. So yeah, these CNS activities are reserved for 1 day, and then for the other day I'll work more on the movement patterns, doing lighter exercises. And lighter exercises simply mean exercises that don't deplete the central nervous system to the same degree. So if you have a bit of a thicker band, doing band assisted repetitions, so maybe pulley assisted repetitions, like just generally working on the movement and perhaps some lacking areas for that day. But if all you're focusing on is strength, try to go for 2 of these sessions per week, but make sure that every 4 to 8 weeks, depending on your sleep quality, depending on your nutrition, depending on your training intensity, that you get any sort of deload week. So doing higher repetition for the same exercises or longer hold times, but with a lighter load. So drop the weight for the weighted pull-ups. If you have weights for the iso holds, drop that too. And, or perhaps use a band for like getting some assistance. And yeah, for the negatives as well, just ease in on all of these or just focus on doing pull-ups in sort of similar style to what you're going for. Whether that's one arm pull-up, one arm chin-ups, doing just pull-ups and chin-ups. Do a bit of a higher rep count there and just with a lighter load for those deloads. Yeah, if you sleep really well, if you eat really clean, and if you train at a high intensity but not like insane, you're still functioning so to speak, you might take a deload every 6, 7, even 8 weeks. But if you're noticing that, okay, maybe especially if like sleep quality is not that good and you're not eating just as well, like your diet's not ideal at the moment, and it's really intense training, then I'd absolutely have more frequent deload weeks. And the next big question would be, how do you actually progress with this? I mean, there are a lot of ways to do this, and you can have a lot of systems that go on to like a sort of gradual program. So if you could do, let's say you're in the 4 to 6 rep range when you're doing weighted pull-ups, right? If you get to 5 reps for a particular session, then at a particular weight you want to add 2.5 kilos. If you get 6 reps, you want to add 5 kilos. If you get to 7 reps, you want to add 7.5 kilos. All of these systems for how to gradually add weight incrementally from session to session. But here I'm quite a fan of the Russian method. Dominic Sky's talked quite a bit about this in terms of weighted pull-ups, and I've tested it out myself for a long time, and I'm really a fan of it as well. So what you basically do here is that you stick to a particular weight for a long time. And this is where I've been working the 3 to 5 range. So you do, let's say you're just doing weighted pull-ups in your training, as an easy example now, let's say before you do any unilateral work, you'll have a session where you do 3 sets of 3 reps. The next session you will do 4 sets of 3 reps, then you'll do 5 sets of 3 reps. Those are 3 separate sessions. And then once you hit 5 sets of 3 reps, or perhaps even 6 sets of 3 reps, you want to add 1 more rep to each set and go on to 3 sets of 4 reps, 4 sets of 4 reps, 5 sets of 4 reps, before you go to 3 sets of 5 reps, 4 sets of 5 reps, and 5 sets of 5 reps.
Thank you, Shanice.
And now when you get to this 5x5, you then want to add a larger increment of weight to your current weighted pull-ups. So rather than constantly each session go up by maybe half a kilo, 2 kilos, and then you have some weeks where you feel really weak and you can't really perform at the wanted level at all, then now you're sticking to a particular weight for a long period of time, a good couple of weeks, maybe upwards of a month. And once you get there, like once you get to the 5x5, you add, rather than 2 kilos here, 3 kilos there, you add maybe even 10 kilos, so if that's a bit much, perhaps 7.5 or closer to 5. It depends how far you've taken this system, right? I can't grow indefinitely by you putting on 10, 10, 10. But when I did this primarily between like a range of 25, 30, 40 kilos, it went pretty well with like slapping on good amounts of weight. Obviously when you get to the new weight, it might take a bit of time to adjust to it, but then you keep on the system from there as well. 3x3 up again to 5x5, or if you have the 4-6, 3x4 to 5x6, that type of thing. You don't want to get too many sets. If you have like 5 to 7 rep range, I'd still go for like a 3 to 5 set type of thing, because I mean doing 7 sets of 7, or like, you know, scaling it that way just gets really really intense. And one thing to keep in mind about reps is that if you go too high up here, if you're not very used to it, your elbows will have a lot more movement in them. Like, you'll have a lot more elbow bends during the sets. So it might be easier to develop elbow tendonitis. It seems to be pretty congruent with what I've seen myself doing medium weight, medium number of reps versus doing heavier weight for a lower number of reps. So yeah, there you go. That would be the Russian method for weighted pull-ups. And similar for the isometric hold, you can either have this system where, okay, you want to be within the 5 to 7 range, 5 to 7 second hold. If you get 6 second hold, or you add 1 kilo for next time. If you get a 7 second hold, you add 2 kilos for next time, and have that type of scaling, or simply Russian method. So you stick to, let's say you're doing body weight, you stick to body weight until you can get to, let's say 8 second hold for a couple of sets each session. Or maybe you get to like 9 or 10 seconds even before you then add, let's say, 2 kilo. But with this, don't do too large increments because it's unilateral strength, right? It's like you're unilaterally loading the movement. So adding 5 kilos is a lot heavier here on this than adding, well, at least 5 kilos on the weighted pull-ups, but maybe even 10 kilos, because you're also more used to weighted pull-ups as a movement, generally speaking, right? Whereas unilateral motion is a lot more new to a lot of us. So keep on leveling it up, but do so a bit more slowly, a bit more gradually, and make sure it's just not too overwhelming for your body as a whole. So yeah, same with negatives. You can go for longer and longer hold times, more and more sets each session, or similar type of system, right? Let's say you do 3 sort of sets of negatives, each at 5 seconds, and you want to do sort of, let's say, 4 sets of that same descent time, then 5 sets of that descent time. Then you do 3 sets of a higher descent time. So rather than 5 second descent, maybe you go for 6 or 7 second descent, right? And then when you get to a sort of 5 sets, although this might be a bit much depending on how you structure it up, once you get to the sort of 5 sets of a longer hold time, then you go back down. Here again though, one overarching thing to keep in mind is that you don't want to have volume be too large with this. So try to cap your sets at like, I'd say 6 to 8. And then you might be like, oh, how am I going to progress with the Russian method? Well, try to go for maybe 2 exercises and try to do them a bit differently, right? Rather than doing negatives, that's like, okay, you do 1 negative, then you wait for 5 minutes. Once you sort of level up with these, you could do so that you do 1 negative, then you do the negative on the other arm, and then you go straight back into another negative and into another negative, right? There are ways to make this work really well without having to be in the gym for absolute ages, and without having to do a ton of sets. Your volume is good to a certain extent, but once you start pushing, like, I'd say 8 to 9 sets, like, it starts to get really heavy on those shoulders and on those elbows. So yeah, build up steadily. You can get to a point where you can do a lot of volume, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it or say that it's worth it when it comes to output. So yeah, try to cap your sets and just get the most out of those you're actually using in your training. Plus, if you incorporate asymmetry, it works out quite neatly anyways. Let's say you keep on, like, you want to work within 3 to 5 sets for 2 different exercises. Well, quite simply, 3 sets of one exercise, 5 sets of the other, pick 2 of them, right? For me, for example, it's been isometric holds and negatives, so you could do 3 sets of iso holds, 5 sets of negatives, then next session you'll do 4 of each, then you'll do 5 of the first, 3 of the other. Like, there are ways to sort of make this work and fit it together, but another thing is that you don't have to do 3 to 5 sets. That was a good example for the weighted pull-ups, and I'm quite a fan of doing that in terms of, like, I feel like it was a decent volume. I feel like it was not too much in the sense that it fatigued my body too much, but it was enough to stimulate growth and to lead to, well, continual growth, and for me to actually get stronger on the pull-ups. But given that isometric exercises are more strenuous by nature, you might not want to do 3 to 5 sets. Maybe the range is 2 to 3, or 1 to 3 even, right? But a lot of this will also be just trial and error. What works for you, what you actually enjoy doing, and what fits into your program, both when it comes to time, when it comes to how much energy you have left in the bank, and when it comes to how you want to, like, reach your goals, right? Do you have a lot of different training disciplines you're targeting at once, or do you have one you want to go balls to the walls with and really level up with? So yeah, most of the time there's a quite easy way to fix up your training program, or to sort of tweak these little sets and reps and hold time and rest time and number of sessions per week to make it work quite sustainably for you given your goals and the time you have. But if you guys are struggling with this, I have an announcement I think will be brilliant for you, so sit tight.
Now, as a way of thanking you for having reached 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, in addition to me wanting to get to know you guys inside of this community, for the next couple of weeks I'll be offering coaching completely for free. The things I think I could help you out the most with would be training related to the one-arm pull-up, muscle-up, pull-ups generally, as well as in climbing. And also, if you guys have any questions regarding how to make a good training schedule for all that encompasses a lot of different training disciplines, I think that could be something that I'd be able to help with as well. If you have questions outside of this scope or you just generally want to chat, feel free to also book your slot, as I'd really love to get to know you guys. I mean, I'm looking forward to building a tight-knit group of people that want to see each other succeed when it comes to building elite level skills, elite level strength, and generally level up our capabilities. So if this resonates with you, I'd be honored to have you on one of the calls. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you guys there.
So there you have it, bro, the 3 exercises that I have used to build pulling power and to level up on my one-arm pull-up journey. Weighted pull-ups to get started and to reach a base level of strength to do unilateral variations, and isometric holds pretty much throughout most of the journey once I started doing work with just a single arm, and then negatives once I had proper good unilateral strength so that I could keep leveling up on it and keep challenging myself further. So thanks for watching the video. If you liked it, feel free to smash the like button down below. Also, if you have any comments in terms of things you're struggling with in your training or videos you'd like to see on the channel, feel free to comment that down below as well. And without further ado, here's a video about how to train for the movement pattern of the one-arm pull-up. That's the next component you'd need. You have strength, movement, put those together and you get the one-arm pull-up with enough training, with enough effort, consistency and patience. But yeah, without further ado, that's pretty much it. So thanks for watching. As always, remember to keep on training, train what you love, and I'll catch you in the next one. See ya, guys.